Okay, so here's a brief demo of how to do it. So this message appears on every page. We already know how to do that. There are links that are clickable. And then once you click it, it goes inside. And we will go up as far as this is an article, number 1. If you click on number 3, it shows 3. So this is a variable in here, okay? So now we have data that is returned, okay? So if we're gonna console log data, we can see all 6 articles in here, all right? Yes, so we can see the articles in here, all right? So now we're gonna create a component called single page, single page.js, all right? Rough, okay. And then we're gonna type this is single page. So we know that this message works, okay? So now we need to go back to index and we need to import the single page component. Import single page, right? So now this sits in here. Next thing, we need to iterate through data of all the articles, right? Map value index, all right? And we're gonna return single page component, and we're gonna pass value, which is like iteration, into every single component individually, right? And of course, we need the key. We're gonna set it to index. Otherwise, it's gonna start complaining. Okay, so this should give us 6 of these bad boys on display. Actually, I'm gonna put an HR in here as well, so we can see them separate. Okay, so now we have them in here. So we have our data. Data is being passed. We are not using data yet. We're just iterating through data, passing it as props, and displaying single page. This is a single page, okay? Like this. Okay, so next thing we need to, on every single page, we need to get the props out, right? So if we're gonna console log props, we're gonna pretty much have data in it, okay? In every single component, there is data. Let's just refresh. So now you see, iteration has been done. And every single component has its piece of information in it, right? So next thing we need to do, we want every single element in here to be clickable, like all of those to be clickable. So we need to put it inside a link. Okay, so we're gonna import link from next link, and we're gonna wrap our div inside the link. Now, a very important point to remember in here is that a link, like a component, has to return a single element. Otherwise, you're gonna get error messages. Okay, I'll show you the error message in a second. But first, link ref equals. Now we're gonna create a folder structure, which is gonna be articles slash, and then it's gonna be ID. Whoops. So this is actually incorrect. Hold on a sec. It should be like this. So this is template literals, article, ID. Now we need to get the ID out of the props. So we're gonna destructure. So ID, inside every article, there was title and body, all right? and that's what's inside our props. Okay. All right. So far we have accomplished what we wanted. Every one of them is clickable, right? So you click, you see, article 1. We click, article 2. The only problem is this page does not exist yet. All right, but you can see the point. It's doing what it's supposed to do. Now we're gonna make it a bit nicer looking. So we're gonna put H1. This is clickable article, okay? And then we're gonna put H3. We're gonna put title in here, and we're gonna put, let's do paragraph for the body. Oops, body. Okay. So we're just using the what's inside the iterations inside the data, right? Actually, let's put HR in here. This will look better, I think. Yeah. Okay. So now you see we have this article is clickable, we have the title, and we have the body. Now you have to understand this is a link, so every time you click it, it goes into the article. You don't have to do it this way. You can just put link on the bottom somewhere. It doesn't matter. Now, here is the important part. I told you that link has to return a div, a single element. Because right now you see a link is returning single div that is then returning everything else, right? If we remove a div, we're going to get a big fat error. You see, we get the error. Multiple children were passed to link with href, but only one child is supported. Okay. When you see this error, it tells you to do this. It means that it has to return a single element. Okay. So to solve this, you just wrap it inside a div. You can put any type of tag. In fact, I think you can just do this as well. A fragment. Yeah, it works as well. You see? So link is like React component. It has to return a single element, otherwise it doesn't work. Okay, so now we have this structure. Everything is working. We click, right? Why is it not clicking now? Oh, I see. You cannot put it inside a... Interesting. So fragment does not work. All right. I actually need to make a note on this in my notes. But not fragment. Let me actually pause the video 1 second because I'm doing something for myself. 1 second. Okay, we are back. So we established that div does not work. Oh, div works, but a fragment does not work. All right, good stuff. So next, we want to create this here, this kind of URL, so that it does not give us a 404 error. Page does not exist. So the way to do that, remember that in next, anything you put into pages is going to be a URL. So we create pages and articles. Let's name it articles because in here it's article. Let's put articles. Okay. Next is we need to create a special folder that looks like this. ID. This is how we're naming elements inside the parameters, but that's a different topic. But just remember that you put brackets around it like this. Okay, and now inside this magical folder, we create a index.js, right? So you have to remember that if you go, hold up, let me pause the video for a sec. Okay, so you have to remember that every time you go to folder, right, or any URL, and there is nothing, how to explain it, and there is no direct file indicated in the URL, it will default to index. This is why we put into this folder index, right? So it will default to index, all right? So let's do our ref. Now this extension is called the React fragments, by the way, if you're wondering. Okay, so now this is individual page. Now this is article number, and then we'll put for now question marks. Okay, so now do you remember when we were clicking on it and it was not going anywhere? So now it's going to go to, you see this is article number, right? Because if you look at the path, you see articles and then ID. All right, so all of them are going to go to here, you see, because it's defaulting to this index, right? So ID is variable, it can be 1 2 3 4 5 6, and by default it's going to index. All right, okay, so the final question is, how do we get this 2 from here into here, right, where the question marks are, so that when you click on number 1, it says this is article number 1. If you click on number 2, it says this is article number 2. So this is quite easy to do. We're gonna use what's called next router. Use router from next router, I think, like this, right? So now if you call, let's call it router, use router. Okay, so now if we're gonna console log router, we're gonna get a lot of intel, a lot of info, right? So you see now, every time we click, we're gonna get this stuff here, paths and all that, blah blah blah. Now what we're interested in is the query. You see the query in here, right? So the query is ID 1. 1 comes from this URL, and ID comes from the naming of the folder. So you see this ID here. Now we can rename it to shake and bake. Okay, shake and bake. Now this is going to reload, and it's going to show us shake and bake. You see, query shake and bake 1. But for this exercise, we can change this to ID. I think is better. Or we can just name it number. All right, we just call it number. Number. You can call whatever you want. It's up to you. Okay, so now we want the 1 from here. The way to do that is we can just destructure the router for query, right? We can do const number, right, equals router query. Because you have to understand, router is a big object. Inside the object, there is query, that is also an object. And inside this query, there is number, and that number correlates to this thing here, okay? So now we can put this in here. and this is going to work. Yes, you see? So I'll break it down. Actually, I'm just going to console log it. Console log router. So we don't get confused. What's happening here, you know? Yeah, sometimes it does that. When it does that, you want to just restart the router. npm run dev. Okay, so it compiled. All right. This is router. So this way we're gonna see it in the console log, right? Otherwise it's gonna get messy. Okay, so now we have the structure, right? We click into the article. There is the router. Well, router, whatever. You can name router whatever you want, right? And there is our query, number 1, all right? So again, the naming number comes from here. It comes from here, all right? And the value 1 comes from whatever this number is, okay? So articles dash whatever the number is going to be the value in here, okay? So if it's 1, if it's second article, it's going to be 2, right? Yeah, so you see it's now 2. You see? So if we go into 3, it's going to be 3. Oh, I've clicked into 2. My apologies. Okay. So this is number 3, you see? Ideally, I should probably refresh it, honestly, like this. So we click into 6, it's going to be 6, right? Number 6, that's it. And that's about it, I think, right? Yeah. So next stage is going to be to populate this with some information, but I'm going to do it in my own time. All right, take care.